As you know, 1 in 6 people experience infertility, which means that if you take a closer look at pretty much any group of people of reproductive age, you'll find people who might need some support in trying to conceive. Well, today we're going to take a closer look at a group that might even be disproportionately impacted. Today's guest is Maia Brown, president of the Beltane Guild, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to firefighter reproductive health. On top of running the guild, she's also a firefighter paramedic in Washington State. We're going to let her share her story today, why she chose this mission, and how the Beltane Guild helps firefighters build their families. I'm Dan Bulger with Progyny, and this is Infertility.
I had been an egg donor about 15 years prior, and the blessing of that was I got this full reproductive health scan, and I was pleasantly surprised that everything looked really good. I was able to help a family have twins through that process. And so I kind of went into my 20s and 30s thinking, I'm okay. I've got good reproductive health. I've got a good ovarian reserve or a good number of eggs left. I don't have to worry about freezing my eggs. I was going through paramedic school about 6 years ago. And I don't know why I chose paramedic school to, the middle of a very, very stressful time to go have this checked out, but I did. And I found out that my anti-Mullerian hormone, or my AMH levels, which reflect how many eggs you have left, it was very low. It was bordering on zero, and I just fell apart. I was completely shocked and was wondering if I was ever going to be able to have kids, and suddenly just everything was turned on its head and upside down and backwards, and I was really, really sad. I was really sad. I think one of the first thoughts that came to my mind is my job affecting my reproductive health? And at the time, Dr. Jenke, Dr. Hollerbach, and several others had started doing research. There's a couple older studies that had come out, but they're all for male firefighters. But the interest in firefighter reproductive health was just starting out. So I felt that I had to scour the internet just to find bits and pieces of information, and none of it really felt like it completely was directed towards me. And on that note, there was also very few departments that seemed to have policies that educated and guided fire departments when it came to their firefighters' reproductive health, whether it be pregnancy or infertility or miscarriage or anything, fostering, adopting, anything along those lines.
Down the line, when she and her husband decided to start trying, they found that they needed IVF.
I did have to do in vitro with my husband. We were successful, and then we actually got pregnant naturally after that. But in that process, I realized how nice it would have been to have a policy in place to guide through that process. So that's what we do a lot of work with now, is educating other departments by consulting how to build out a really well-rounded, comprehensive, research and legally based policy. My decision to start the Beltane Guild was really me feeling like I was on an island, but absolutely certain that there were other people out there feeling the same way, and wanting to create a home base for everyone, a homepage, literally a website homepage that people could go to and have all the best policies, all the best research, and then some little form of hope in the form of grants. And so that's how the Beltane Guild got created. I chose the Beltane Guild as the name because in summary, Beltane is a holiday of fire and fertility back in, Scandinavia. It's usually right around May Day. And so it just seemed like the perfect fitting name, even if it's a little bit hard to pronounce. I just wanted to be there in case anyone needed me. And I've been so amazed at how much momentum has picked up in the past couple of years. We have more women joining the fire service, and they're very, very interested in what information is out there. They're very interested in getting their policies updated at their fire departments.
Without guidance, firefighters have to navigate this complicated and difficult journey alone.
Yeah, there was nothing. There was no guidance. However, I will say my department was incredibly supportive, and they made everything possible for me to go through that process. What I will say is it's the mindset of I'm already a little traumatized by the fact that I have to go through IVF. It's financially scarring. You're trying to start a family, and if you're, fortunately successful, then you are bringing new kids into the world with potentially some debt, right? Because you've had to pay out to go through this process. So you've got the emotional scar from the fact that your body's not working the way it's supposed to, and then you have the financial scar, and then this mentality of like I'm a burden, or I'm asking for something above and beyond from my department by asking to go to these last minute appointments and needing flexibility with my schedule, and even saying, hey, I think I should, if it's possible, I'd like to go on modified duty for about a month before I start this process so that I can get my body healthy on a normal sleep schedule, reduce my stress, and go into this with the best possible outcome available. That is something that actually I think we should just have established in policies, so that could just, because in that moment I felt like I was asking the world. I felt so bad for asking for that special accommodation, but really, um, as I've learned more over the years, infertility is actually covered under the Americans with Disability Act. Like, it wasn't really me asking anything above and beyond, and I'm sad that I felt that way. I should have just, you know, gone and asked for something that's already established and not a big deal.
With the Beltane Guild, Maya is working to help ensure firefighters have access to the support that is available to them.
Recently, I caught wind of a firefighter that was pregnant that was already on modified duty, working in the office, when later in her pregnancy, she needed to go on bed rest. And she requested another accommodation to be able to work remotely from home. And that request was denied. And it wasn't denied for any particular reason other than they'd already made one accommodation. And traditionally in their department, the way I understand it is they don't make more than one accommodation for, I don't know, for some reason it was denied. Now, this department, not having a policy that was completely comprehensive and not up to date with all the laws, didn't realize that in Washington state, you actually, if someone has a limitation where they can't lift more than 17 pounds during pregnancy, modified duty and accommodation has to be granted to them. So they didn't even know it. They were doing the best they could with the information they had, but they didn't realize they were completely violating a Washington state RCW law. So that's just one example of so many where we really need people to adopt these policies so that they can fully understand what the expectation is, what the laws are, and also, most importantly, how to keep our firefighters and the growing fetus inside of them safe. If you don't have these policies, people, uh, you know, traditionally we don't tell people we're pregnant for 12 weeks, right? And so say you're a firefighter, say you're on probation and you get pregnant, and maybe it wasn't your plan because you're on probation, but life happens, right? And you don't tell anybody because you're not sure what's going to happen to you. You don't see anywhere in a policy whether your job's protected or if you could get fired for it, or um, what ramifications are going to come from being pregnant. So you don't tell anyone. And meanwhile, you're in fire academy under the most stress, the least sleep, and the highest exposure to toxins because you're doing all these live fire burns and training scenarios. Uh, and meanwhile, you're exposing your fetus and your own body to all of that. And in that first trimester is actually where your fetus is developing the most crucial pieces, right? Like the organs and the tissues, the things that are essential, and they are at highest risk of being, um, you know, having issues because of the exposure. So that mindset is just completely backwards, and it's not. It, it's our kids we're talking about, right? It's our kids. Like, we can't just let this go any longer. We need to have this awareness out there.
Firefighters and union reps can reach out to the Beltane Guild through a form on their website.
The requests are typically, can you help us build a policy? What information do you have about fertility benefits? And do you have any grants available? So if it's, can you help us build out a policy? I typically direct them to the policy section of our website, which what we have on there is what we call the gold standard reproductive health policy. And this policy was actually built off of my co-board member Stephanie White's policy, and then 20 plus firefighters from around Washington state with the help of NDRI, which does all the firefighter research. We all came together and said, how do we make this even better? How do we build this out to our absolute pie in the sky policy? And that is what that is. So it is a great starting point for any department to go through and say like, oh gosh, I didn't even think about pregnancy on probation, or I didn't even think about uniforms and how their bodies are gonna change, or, it really goes step by step through every process, and also covers the miscarriage and adoption and fostering and all these other things around just family. So we guide them to that policy, and then I just help walk them through it and explain what laws it's based on and what research it's based on, so that I can back up why we have it written the way we do. So that's a piece of it, but it's also part of a package. So you don't just get on the website, you don't just get the policy, you also get a letter that you can take to your OBGYN to say, hey, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a firefighter, and firefighters' jobs are very different than, say, someone who works in an office. Here's a little education about what I do, so that we can have an educated discussion about when I stop shift work, what kind of limitations I need, etc. So that's a piece of it. And then we also have just a form that a department could use for someone to request modified duty for some specialty kind of ad hoc reasons, like IVF treatment, or I need just a month for my sperm to not be exposed to all these hazard or toxins, so that I can freeze them. So like, can I have a month? Can I request a month of modified duty just so I can get some good sperm frozen? Or we're doing IVF and I need to do a transfer. Let's make it as successful as possible.
On top of information and resources, the Guild also gives $500 grants.
There to say, you're not alone. We're here for you. We're sorry that you have to go through this. Most departments don't offer fertility benefits. That's changing slowly. In fact, I know Progyny does partner with fire departments, and we call them trusts, but sometimes lots of departments work together to build out an insurance policy and package. And I know Progyny has partnered with them as well, which is amazing. And I'm so excited that in Washington state, there's a bill to just pass fertility treatment for everyone. So that's going to be great too. But as I said, the grants are $500, and it's really simple. It's really simple for a reason. When I was going through IVF and I was looking for grants, I remember certain agencies asking me to fill out an application and then submit money with my application, like an application fee. And I was like, I can't give you money when I'm asking for money. and plus I didn't know how many people I was going up against. I didn't know, it was just really not transparent. And so for the Beltane Guild, I just wanted it to be super simple. All someone has to do is send me an email through the website. I will ask if the funds are available. If we've been able to fundraise enough, I will ask for proof of their employment as a firefighter and proof of their treatment. So just a receipt from their fertility clinic. They can black out all the sensitive information, and that's it. That is it. And then I literally just wire a check. So every dollar that we get donated to us goes back out to firefighters. I pay for all the website maintenance fees myself. That way I can truly say anything somebody donates directly goes back out to a firefighter in need.
The Beltane Group is partnering with others in the community to expand their impact and amplify support.
Some really exciting things that are happening right now are our partnerships with Women in Fire and the NDRI, that research institute I told you about that does all the research on firefighter cancers and reproductive health. The three of us have partnered together for a $1 million FEMA grant that is developing reproductive health toolkits for fire departments and firefighters around the country. And so that's one of our big endeavors right now, is building out that toolkit. And we're really excited to have that roll out a little bit later this year. And the idea behind that is if you are pregnant and you're a firefighter, you can go to the website, probably within Women in Fire, and request one of these toolkits. And it's going to send basically that package of documents that I talked about from our website. In fact, they're going to be basing their policy recommendation off of our gold standard policy. So you'll see a lot of similar information, but it's just that basic level of information and awareness that'll come out in that toolkit. So that's one thing we're really excited about. And then I actually just recently got approached by a film company that would like to produce a documentary on firefighter reproductive health. And so that's in the very early stages. But that is also a possibility coming down the pipe. And then in addition to that, we've started traveling to different conventions around the country. So I will be lecturing for the first time at Women in Fire's International Conference in San Diego in September, along with my co-board members, Melissa and Brittany. And so I think what I'm really proud of is just, maybe there were all these other people who kind of felt like they were on their own little islands trying to figure out this firefighter reproductive health. And I think the networking that has happened over the past couple of years has just been so incredible. Working together, showing this amazing alliance to educate and bring up the level of policy and awareness at fire departments around the country. I think that we are making really good progress with that. I think this is top of mind for a lot of departments now, whereas it wasn't 5 or 6 years ago.
If you'd like to learn more about the Beltane Guild, learn how you can help, or to access some of the amazing resources on offer, you should visit www.thebeltaneguild.org. I want to thank Maia Brown for joining us today and for all the work she's doing with the Beltane Guild. And I want to thank you for listening. If you want to connect with us, you can do so on Instagram at This is Infertility Podcast. If you want to follow Progyny, you can do that at Progyny Inc. This Infertility is brought to you by Progyny. Please remember this podcast is not intended to substitute for the personalized expert advice of your physician. I'm Dan Bulger, and this is Infertility.